So what could be the safest place in a plane to sit?
Survive an accident in case the plane crashes if you sit in the last third of the plane. So next time you go on a plane and your viewers get on a plane, they know where to sit now. They know where to pick their seat
Yeah.
during web check-in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we call helicopters and the other flying things also an aircraft?
Yeah, as the name suggests, so craft means vehicle and air is air. So
Yeah.
so any vehicle that is in the air is called an aircraft. Aeroplanes are known as fixed wing aircraft. Helicopters are in aviation language known as rotary wing aircrafts. I have to tell you something very interesting. Did you know that kites are also aircrafts?
Really?
In this country, he had 5 airports and one aircraft repairing site. Okay,
Fuck.
so
So Adipurush wasn't wrong.
probably, I mean, a lot of these things are inspired.
Hijacks.
Interesting.
Can you tell me any of the stories, regarding the hijack?
There was this Indian Airlines flight IC-814. There were these hijackers who were already on board with a whole lot of ammunition, and the plane took off without getting refueled.
Without getting
Without getting refueled. This entire operation took 7 days, and they were not allowed to go to the restroom, and it was a horrible situation.
not allowed to go to
Yeah, it was. I mean, there have been lots of movies and documentaries made on this.
So it's been a long time since we have met.
Right,
It's been a,
right.
a lot of conversations between us
Absolutely.
regarding
Yeah.
aviation
It's
and
such
stuff.
a pleasure to be here on your OG show, and I'm very excited, looking forward, in fact, to be speaking a lot about aviation
Right.
to someone like you.
Yeah.
And I remember we've had some discussion way back in the past about aircrafts and all that.
Right.
But I'm super excited to be talking to you on this podcast.
Yeah. So whenever I think of aviation pilots, with this world, this big world,
Right.
I don't get a lot of information, in the internet, bro. Or else, even if I get some information, there's a lot of lingo problem. I
Yeah.
don't
And there's lots of
understand.
misinterpreted information on the
Exactly.
internet.
So I just thought I just wanted to do a proper podcast, to everybody out there to understand what
Right.
aviation is.
Awesome.
Yeah. So let's start, man. Let's
Yeah.
understand this term aviation and aviator. Just explain
Okay.
this thing.
All right. So aviation, if you want me to define aviation, the word aviation is basically it's around the development and operation of aircrafts. That's what it means. And there are many shareholders, and this word aviation can be subcategorized into three things, which could be military aviation, commercial aviation, and general aviation. So, and coming to aviators, as you mentioned, aviators are anybody who, I mean, there are many shareholders in aviation, and the guys who merely operate this vehicle, which is the aircraft,
Right.
are known as aviators. So there are many other shareholders, right from manufacturers, maintenance engineers, the marshalers, the people who fill fuel into the aircraft, lots of other shareholders.
Right.
And aviators or pilots, as we commonly use, are just one mere shareholder in this aviation industry, which is huge, who operate this vehicle. Yeah, that's about, yeah.
So, what about this aviator Ray-Ban glasses everybody wearing?
Oh, that's got a huge story.
Yeah.
It started way back in the 80s, if I'm
Right.
not wrong, and it was there around in the 80s. But you know what popularized this aviator series? It was the Top Gun,
Top Gun.
Top Gun by Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
And I remember Of course, I was born in the 90s. I'm a millennial, but this movie was already so damn popular when I was born. Okay, and this movie released in 86. And Tom Cruise was 24 years old when he acted in this movie, Tom Cruise, in Top Gun, sorry. And he was Agent Maverick
Yeah.
in that, as everyone knows. And the sunglasses that he wore in the movie became so popular, and thereby it started getting the name called Aviators. And
Yeah.
today, even as of today, it's called Aviators.
Yes.
And thanks to the man, Tom Cruise, for it.
Yeah. And I have a very interesting fact about Top
Okay.
Gun movie.
Okay.
The title Top Gun.
Yeah.
This Top Gun is a school
Okay.
of US Navy SEALs.
Oh, wow. Wow.
These people are used to train in that Top Gun school.
Right.
And when Tom Cruise went and saw this entire school, and he loved the name Top
Okay.
Gun.
Okay, so he
And
picked it.
Yeah. So people there used to call each other Top G, Top G, Top G.
Top G.
Like Top
okay.
Gangster,
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, like OG, like an OG show.
Yeah, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Then they picked out this name and, they adapted it to the film.
Wow, that's an interesting trivia.
That was a killer.
Yeah,
When I
yeah.
got to hear this, I was like,
Mm.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's go a little deep into the subject of aviation.
Sure.
So if somebody wants to become a pilot, they're so
Yeah.
passionate about
Yeah.
aircrafts and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So how do they start?
I mean, so there are lots of things that one needs to be careful about before they even make the choice. This is my opinion.
Right.
One would be, first of all, they need to have maths and physics. They need to be really good at it. And even if they're a little okay with it, they need to have that as subjects in their plus two.
Yeah.
If they don't have, then they don't, qualify to become a pilot. So they need to, maybe attend open school and then get these two subjects, because lots of these people, a lot of my friends also have chosen biology or other, subjects in their plus two. Till 10th, it's mandatory.
Right.
But after 10th, they, tend to choose subjects like biology, and they don't have either maths or physics, and they are not eligible. So, like I first mentioned, they need to have maths and physics in their plus two. If they don't, they have to attend open school,
Right.
and then they need to get their degree and pass. So, you just have to pass. It's okay. There is no cutoff on that.
Yeah.
The second thing would be to, I would suggest all the upcoming aspiring pilots
Right.
to undergo like something like a, an elaborate medical examination of themselves, because a lot of people unfortunately make the mistake of enrolling themselves in a flying school either here or abroad, which I'll come to after this.
Yeah.
How to go about that process. They enroll and take admission and start flying, and thereafter they get their class 1. So there is class 1 medical and class 2 medical, which the and class 3 as well.
Right.
But for flying, class 1 medical and class 2 medicals are the two medical examinations which are required for you to have a pilot license. Class 2 is the lower category, which is a little more laid back.
Right.
It's a thorough examination of your full body, and you have to get that class 2 medical done, ideally to start even training. To even be a learner or a learning pilot or a cadet pilot, student pilot, you have to have a class 2 medical. So I suggest, the guys who are aspiring to become pilots to get a class 2 medical, and then once everything in their body is okay, because there are certain conditions which are not life threatening, but they are, they're not allowed to, in aviation, and they will immediately dismiss you from flying. You will, yeah. Like, it could be color blindness, partially color blinded. Like some people can't see only certain colors, and it doesn't hamper the daily activities. Yeah. And small things. It could be cataracts, which they don't even know that they have this, or some
Hearing-
condition. Yeah.
Hearing disabilities.
Hearing, exactly. There could be a dip in your frequencies, and you could feel absolutely fine, and you could go on to live 100 years. But with respect to aviation, in the perspective of aviation, these things immediately disqualify you as a pilot, and you don't want to be paying a huge amount of money and investing, putting a lot of hard work, studying for the exams, and then learning that you have a some kind of shortcoming in the body. So that is something that I strongly urge who are aspiring to be pilots to please go get a medical examination, class 2 medical, and then enroll for a flying school. So yeah, these two are pretty much the prerequisites before taking admission. So like I mentioned, these two, whereas the first one was the subjects, maths and physics in your plus 2, and your class 2 medical get done before they enroll themselves into a flying school. Which brings me to the next point of flight training organizations, or flying schools, which is commonly known as. So there are many flying schools abroad and in India, and there are lots of pointers before you make the choice to either go abroad or study in your country. And so the first aspect is the cost. Of course, the cost abroad is a little expensive, like in all cases of education. It's a little expensive to study abroad, to learn your flying abroad. And the most popular destinations abroad is the US, and next comes South Africa, and then New Zealand. These three are the most popular destinations for learning flying. And also Canada is the new upcoming destination for flight training schools.
Right.
So a lot of Indians go to these FTOs and do their entire flying training there, get a license in that country, come back, and then convert that country's license to an Indian license. That's the procedure. So in terms of the exams, the theory aspect and the paperwork, it's a little cumbersome, because you have to write exams of that country first, pass, and some countries have like 10, 12 papers. Like in New Zealand, it's very like, they've got so many papers to write, and then you clear all of them, get a private pilot license first, and then go on to get your commercial pilot license, which will allow you to fly in airlines. The second option is, of course, pursuing your flying in India, and which is, I think it's quite, it's upcoming really fast in this country. It's developing, and it's like a fast booming sector.
Right.
And there are lots of flying schools. In fact, in Hyderabad, there are about 3 flying schools that are operating out of Begumpet Airport.
Yeah.
And the only issue, I think, in India is 2 things. One is the airspace. It's quite crowded because it's a smaller country compared to the US.
Right.
and it's quite crowded. There's lots of air traffic.
Mm.
And second thing would be the time taken for students to finish their commercial pilot license is a whole lot of time. And all of these guys who go abroad want to cut out on that time, because abroad you get to finish your CPL license training in just about 10 to 12 months,
Yeah.
within a year. And in India, I mean, a lot of my friends as well have taken 2-3 years to
Yeah.
complete,
Yeah.
and it's because of no fault of theirs.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just that the way the system functions in this country is a little slow, and to add to that, there are a lot of other external factors, regulations, traffic, and all that. So yeah, that's pretty much
Yeah.
in a nutshell.
When you mentioned about this delayed process in the
Yeah,
country,
yeah, yeah,
our friend,
yeah,
Ashok,
yeah.
he's been once in a while. I was asking him about an examination he needs to write,
Right.
and he needs to pay to that examination or some
Yes.
10,000 rupees or
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
So sometimes he's saying that the money got debited,
Yeah.
but it didn't got credited in the other
Yeah.
account.
Yeah.
Now what should you do? I mean,
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
to
yeah,
pay again.
yeah. I know. Like that's what I
I was
mentioned
like,
about
yeah, it
the way
is.
the system functions here. I mean, it's definitely improving,
Yeah.
but it's still definitely lagging behind when you compare to the other countries in the West, and that's a little annoying, because a lot of these, like you said, a lot of
Exactly.
these payments for licenses, for your, a lot of things, even examinations, you got to write 5 exams,
Right, right.
and then you have to go and fly 200 hours and then get your pilot license. So at a lot of these junctions, you have to be transacting with the government, and all of these are government websites. They always have these server downs or like slowed down moments, phases. And then one such lucky, if you're very unlucky, then you end up becoming like him, where you lose money, you
Yeah.
lose 5,000, 10,000 rupees, and you don't get refunds of this. And if you want refund, it's a huge procedure. You'll have to, it's a proper government procedure. You'll have to file something like an RTI, and it's a huge procedure. So people prefer to not get the refund. They'll just pay up, and so that their work gets done.
Right.
Anyway, it's so delayed in India.
Right.
So yeah, that's pretty much, I think, the disadvantages. But the advantages on the other side to be highlighting of training in India would be, first of all, you get to be on your homeland, on
Yeah.
your mother country,
Yeah.
and you get to eat your food, and you're with your ecosystem, your friends, and everything in the same country. And of course, India is beautiful when you see it from up there, because I've trained in India to be a pilot, and I just can't tell you how beautiful it looks. And there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential, especially in these suburbs, tier 2, tier 3 cities, where there are runways and airports already being made as part of the state government's initiatives to connect. That will come to that again. There are UDAN schemes and RCS, which is initiated by the central government and the state government. Both of them aid, and they're trying to get the regional connectivity stronger. So these airports have excellent facilities in terms of the technology and the facility there at the airport for aircrafts to land, but they don't have enough traffic yet. So these airports, tier 2, tier 3 cities, become very, very important points for flying schools to operate from, because they get to use the facility in a real world environment, interact with bigger aircrafts, and the students get to fly in proper runways, but with less traffic as compared to a city like Hyderabad, Bangalore, or Mumbai. So India is definitely an upcoming space, like I mentioned initially, also for the flight training sector, but it still needs to pull up its socks. And probably the main pointer in people when they consider here or abroad is the time.
Time.
Yeah, yeah.
So, as you mentioned, no, physics and maths and physics
Yes.
are the most important things,
Yeah.
and also a little physical disabilities.
Yes.
What about the sight?
So yeah, this is again a misconception that a lot of people have. So you definitely, if you have some power, you can definitely fly. It's not a problem. You can wear specs and fly,
Yeah.
and there is no issue as such. The only thing that the aviation regulatory body here in India and abroad say is that the vision needs to be correctable to 6 on 6 vision. That's all. So if you have some power
Yeah.
with the use of lens or surgery or spectacles, if you get the vision after using these spectacles or whatever aid, if you get it down to 6 on 6, then you can fly the plane. There's absolutely no issue. But if you have excellent sight and you have color blindness, you cannot fly. So, this is a misconception. People think, oh my God, okay, these 8th standard, 10th standard kids who aspire to become pilots, they're like, no, I can't become a pilot because I have specs. That's so not true.
Yeah.
The only thing that the DGCA, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation in India, says that you're supposed to carry an alternate pair of specs in your flight kit when you fly.
Oh,
Just so that there is redundancy in case something, if this breaks or something happens, the lens come out.
right.
You can pick up your extra pair of lenses and then fly.
But this becomes a very costly affair to a lot of young aspirants who are just below middle class or above middle class.
Yeah.
These people, I think they can't afford,
Yeah.
everybody can't afford to be a pilot, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, aviation is a very, very expensive domain to be in. There's a very funny quote that people usually say. They say, "Welcome to aviation. You're now officially broke." Because it's so expensive.
Yes.
Everything right from the getting your medical exam done and applying for the exams and writing your exams and then enrolling yourself in a flying school.
Right.
It's such an expensive affair.
Yes.
And for you to become a pilot here in India today, it'll cost you anywhere between 40 to 60, 65 lakhs. And that is just for you to be able to fly, start flying as a first officer or as junior first officer in an airline. So it is quite expensive. And if you choose to go abroad, it's even more expensive. So
I thought in India it would land somewhere about 1 crore.
not really. So the pricing for obtaining a commercial pilot license here in India today is anywhere between 40 to 45 lakhs today.
Right.
A decent flying school.
Right.
And after which you get your commercial pilot license.
Right.
But with that, you can't really join an airline. You will have to, so let me tell you something very interesting. So like how you have your driving license, right?
Yeah.
It just says, okay, this Vignesh can drive a car,
Yes.
a powered four-wheeler, or say a two-wheeler with gear or without gear. It just says that. It doesn't mention the model in it, which models you can drive. So in pilot licenses, it's different. So the pilot license carries the model that you can fly only. You can only fly that particular model. So you just can't fly anything you want. So if my pilot license says, okay, Maruti Suzuki Swift, I can only operate a Swift. I can't drive an Innova.
Right.
It's like that. So we learn on smaller planes when we are being trained in our flying schools. And airlines don't have these small planes. They have huge planes which carry like 180 passengers. So then we'll have to go after obtaining our commercial pilot license.
Yeah.
We will have to go abroad or do something known as a type rating program.
Right.
So then you enroll yourself in another academy, a type rating academy,
Yes.
and then learn the plane that you want to be flying in the airline that you want to join.
Yes.
And that will cost again anywhere between 12 to 20 lakhs, 25 lakhs upwards. And then once you learn how to fly that plane and then you come back and apply for an endorsement, then the DGCA puts that plane model also. It endorses that plane model on your license. Then you approach an airline for a job and you attend their interviews and say, I can fly the airline that you have, the aircraft that you have, kindly hire me. And then there's a whole lot of procedure that they have before they hire you.
Right.
There are rounds, there are group discussions, there are personal interviews, there are written entrance exams.
Yeah.
And then you go on to become a pilot. And during all this, you will have to maintain your health. You will also have to do things like, there is something known as Aviation English Language Proficiency,
Right.
AELP.
Right.
So your English, your command over English is also tested because you could be flying over China or countries where the English is not the main language, and you need to have the common common language to communicate with them.
The common lingo.
Common lingo,
Yeah.
exactly. So there's something known as aviation telephony, radio telephony, which is like a common language across the entire world. Okay, so all pilots, even if you're flying over Japan or Russia or wherever, you will speak the same language. And so there are licenses that you have to get. So you write something known as IELTS, like something like IELTS
Yeah.
that you write, but it's called AELP, which is Aviation English Language Proficiency. You get a license for that as well, and you're graded based on how good your English is. So if you're a level 3 and below, you fail. And level 4, 5, 6, you pass, 6 being the highest. If you get a level 4 during the exam, it's an interview like this. And then you're graded a level. You're awarded a level. And in level 4, if you get, then you get 2 years of validity. After 2 years, you have to again come and, speak, give the exam, talk to the examiner in English, and then he'll award you. Level 5 every 6 years. And level 6 is lifetime. You won't have to, ever get that test. So there are lots of things which are expensive and which are very sophisticated. And you know what? Like, when you join an airline, you get controls of a 800 crore machine. Okay, so they won't give it to you so easily. Okay,
Yeah.
you will have to, go through a lot of processes, and then once you're completely ready and they test you in and out, is when they'll hire you. So it's that direct. Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Yeah.
So you just give me some random cool facts about aviation that people don't know.
Sure. So some cool aviation facts would be one that a third of your senses, one third of your taste buds don't work in the aircraft. Your
Ah,
taste levels are far more suppressed as compared to
really?
being on the ground. That's probably why you find food on the aircraft
Very bland,
very
yeah.
bland and not so tasty.
Right,
You
right.
blame the airline, but it's not just that. It's pretty
Right.
much all the airlines, all the airline operators have pretty much the same issue. I mean, you go and get on the best plane, you still don't find the food that tasty.
Yeah, yeah.
It's got to do with the air being very dry
Uh-huh.
up there because inside the cabin they maintain a certain atmospheric pressure,
Right.
right? And when you go up, the atmospheric pressure that's maintained inside the aircraft is close to 6 to 8,000 feet. So
Oh,
imagine you being on a mountain which is 8,000 feet and the air is full dry. It's not like the way it would be on that mountain.
Yes, yes.
It's full dry. So that reduces one third of your senses. So close to 33% of your taste buds don't work.
Right.
Okay. So it's a good place to have like, some very bad tasting Ayurvedic medicines and like tomato juices and all that in
yeah.
case you want to be having that. So that is one cool fact.
Right.
And the next cool fact would be so the two pilots that operate an aircraft when you
Yeah,
travel in an airline are not allowed to have the same food. So if
Ah,
the main commander wants to have a sandwich, the first officer has to get like pasta or something else.
Yeah.
And it's only because that, if in case there is some kind of contamination in the food,
Yeah.
both don't get food poisoning or, some kind of issue. At least one is there to take care of the aircraft controls.
Understood.
And that's a cool fact again. And there's another cool fact that I recently came across. You know how smoking is banned on aboard a plane?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was actually going to
Yeah.
ask you because
Yeah.
I've seen a series named Mindhunter.
Okay.
And there are two, investigative journalists who
Okay.
continuously smoke and
Okay.
drink on plane.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I haven't seen that anywhere.
Yeah, so smoking is completely banned, at least in India. But it was banned a couple of years ago itself. But you still see these announcements being made by the cabin crew that smoking is strictly prohibited and you will be, penalized by the government of India in case you are found smoking. First of all, when you get onto a plane through the terminal, security will ensure that you don't get a cigarette on board. They will pick it out and they will throw it. But somehow, if you manage to get in and then they have these multiple announcements, you also see the seatbelt sign and then the no smoking sign next to each other always. And it's ensured on so many levels. But if you go inside the lavatory, the bathroom of the aircraft, you will see one ashtray. That's present on all aircrafts.
Really?
All aircrafts that we have today have ashtrays in the
haven't
in the
noticed
in the
this, yeah.
lavatories. Yeah. And why is that? Is simply because in case someone manages to carry a cigarette through the security and has wants to like smoke a cigarette and lights it up actually somehow. At least he finds a proper place to dispose it off, and it doesn't cause any kind of fire hazard to the plane. So they put an ashtray.
fuck, man?
Yeah, there is an ashtray on every plane in the lavatory.
Yeah.
That's again a very cool quotient that I came across recently. Yeah.
So basically, when we talk about the aircrafts,
Yes.
and an aeroplane is an aircraft, right?
Yes.
Do we call helicopters and the other flying things also an aircraft?
Yeah, as the name suggests, aircraft, as in it's a craft, it's a vehicle which goes in the air. So craft means vehicle, and air is air. So so any vehicle that is in the air is called an aircraft, and a helicopter is also very much an aircraft. So where an aeroplane that we generally fly in and an helicopter are different is in the fact that aeroplanes are known as fixed wing aircrafts.
Yeah.
So they have a fixed wing.
Right.
Right, and they have engines mounted on those or mounted in the back or in the front,
Right.
and they use a runway and then they fly. That's how they fly fixed wing aircrafts. Helicopters are in aviation language known as rotary wing aircrafts.
Rotary wing.
Rotary wing aircraft. So it's basically the fan that you see on top. Those are actually the wings. Pretty much the wings. They function as wings, but it's rotary wings.
Right.
So it's much bigger than the propellers that you see in smaller aircraft, right? The blades of a helicopter.
Yeah.
So if you see a helicopter, it's pretty much not designed to fly. In terms of aerodynamics, it looks like one huge blob of stone.
Yeah.
So that fascinates me a lot. Like how something like this, like a round piece of metal, how can it go up in the air so effortlessly and land wherever? It's really fascinating to me. So that's a rotary wing aircraft.
Yeah.
Coming back to the point, what else is an aircraft? We spoke about aeroplanes.
Yeah.
We spoke about, fixed wing aircrafts and rotary wing aircrafts. We have also hot air balloons. We have drones. We have, I have to tell you something very interesting. Did you know that kites are also aircrafts?
Really?
In this country,
Really?
according to the Aircraft Act of 1934, anything that is airborne, it's in the air, by itself. It's a device or an equipment which is in the air because of its own whatever, either an engine or by itself under the atmospheric pressure, is categorized as an aircraft. Okay, and you cannot fly any of these things unless you have a license. So kite flying in India is actually illegal. It can attract you penalty of close to 10 lakh rupees or 2 years of imprisonment.
Really?
Yes, yes.
Really?
Yeah. So this is something that people don't know about.
Okay.
And it's very interesting. So you can actually go behind bars if you fly a kite. But it's a lot relaxed because of our, the cultural aspect that the kites have in our country is huge. And you know what's going to happen if you end up actually enforcing the ban. So it's not allowed. So
Right.
kites as well come under the category parachutes, hot air balloons,
Right.
gliders. Then there are something known as light sport aircrafts, microlights, ultralights. A whole range of things are there which are categorized under aircrafts. Yeah, so this is super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, when I got to research about these things now,
Mm.
I've gone through a lot of these physics equations, these
Yeah.
physics principles and
Yeah.
all these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I got to research about this what do we call it? The wings,
Yeah.
the wings of an airplane.
Yes.
These planes are curved on the top,
Yes.
and it is straight on the
Yeah.
bottom.
On the bottom.
So, which creates a pressure, acupressure,
Yeah.
and makes
Yeah.
it move forward.
Yes. So, I mean,
the
in more,
lift.
yeah. So, in more technical terms, I would like to explain. So, basically, if you see an airplane, could be any aircraft. It's got four forces acting on it. One is thrust, which is acting towards the front,
Yes.
which is propelling the aircraft or the aeroplane to move forward.
Right.
And the opposite side of the thrust is drag, which is trying to stop it.
Right.
Okay, so thrust and drag
Drag.
in the opposite directions, front and back. And then top and down, there is the weight acting downwards and there's lift acting upwards.
Yeah.
So these are the four: thrust, drag, lift, weight. These are the four forces acting on an aircraft. And coming to the point that you mentioned about this curve on top and flat.
Yeah.
So on the wings, that's known as a camber. Okay.
Camber.
Camber. CAMBER.
Right.
Camber is the technical term in aviation. So aircrafts which have like a curve on top and a flat bottom is known as a positive camber. So it's got that curve on top and flat down.
Right.
Some have ulta. Some have curved down, and so it's used for different purposes on the
Oh, okay.
aeroplane, depending on where it's installed in the plane. If the same thing is installed in the tail, it's usually ulta.
Right.
It's got that flat on top and it's got a negative camber. And like you mentioned, there's a pressure differential
Yeah.
between the top side and the bottom side of the wing or the elevator or whichever part of the aircraft, which is giving it lift. And this differential is causing the lift to happen, is causing the lift to occur, and the airplane is going up. So the pressure differential is the most important part why you're sitting so comfortably in that airline and just watching out. So if there was no pressure differential and the shape, like there's a reason for everything in a plane. There are lots of things which are very intricately designed. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. When you talk about every shape has its own meaning, and
Yeah.
while we come to this topic of aerodynamics of a plane,
Yes.
can you go a little deep and into this?
Yeah, I'm sure. So, see, a lot of so let me start with the history then,
Yeah.
because there's a whole amount of work that was that has been done in this industry, in the aviation space,
Right.
that I have to get to the history now and then explain who did what and how many shareholders, and I have to tell you about certain architects of aviation.
Right.
So the earliest known design of an aircraft, of an aeronautical design, was put down on a plan by this man known as Sir George Cleley, and I think it was in 1799, so 18th century.
Right.
The last year of the 18th century is when this man, he's also known as father of aviation, by the way. Many people don't know this. Sir George Cleley is known as the father of aviation, and he put down the first plan of an aircraft. Eventually, I think about in the mid 1800s, I think 1853, if I'm not wrong, is when he got on to actually make a glider, design a glider, a proper huge size glider, and he got it to fly as well with a rope. Something like, you can think of it as a kite, a huge kite,
yeah.
but tied with a rope, and a huge kite, like a real size kite. So
How did he even do that?
yeah, so he had designs which he had, according to the physics equations and all that, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
A lot of theories he put down on paper, and he came up with the design in 1799 itself. And he went on to, fly this glider for the first time. And that was super cool. And around the same time, there was another man in Germany, I think in Berlin, known as Otto Lilienthal. Okay, Otto Lilienthal was a crazy guy. So this guy, between 1891 and 1896,
Right.
almost towards the end of that century, 19th century, he at least designed about 16 different kinds of gliders based on the designs that was already there by Sir George Cleley and all that. and he designed 16 different kinds of gliders, and he had close to 2,000 successful flights.
Whoa.
Yeah. And this man, he documented all this as well. Like he designed gliders and he documented in terms of video. There are videos on the internet, I'm sure. And this went on to prove that, before this, everyone found George Cleland and everybody else who thought they could fly as fools. They said this is fool's errand. You can't do something like this. Something so heavy, even say a small piece of rock cannot fly. But these guys proved them wrong. And how? They documented it in videos and all that. And this man, Otto Lilienthal, a German from Berlin, went on to have about 2,000 successful flights, as I mentioned. And he was another crazy guy, but unfortunately the next year, I think one of his last flights was in 1896, where he was flying this plane and the glider, and then it had a nosedive, and then he fractured his spine, and the next day he died. In fact, if he was alive, probably he would have gone on to invent more things. So this is the story about gliders, how these flying devices were first designed and conceptualized. Around the same time, the late 1800s is when the Wright brothers from the US were working on their model, and they were super interested. Again, it's a very interesting story. The popular bit, of course, everyone knows that Wright brothers were the first people to invent an aircraft and fly it, a powered aircraft.
Right.
And they have the title to have invented the powered aircraft,
Right.
which had an engine mounted to it.
Yeah.
But the interesting side of the story is the Wright brothers. There's Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright. These are two brothers. Wilbur was the elder one, and instantly they had no interest in any of these things.
Really?
Yeah, they had no interest. It was this one day, one evening, their father came home with this small toy, which is a paper kind of toy.
Yeah.
And instead of just giving it to these boys in their hand, he just threw it up in the air. But that didn't just fall. It went on floating to the corner of the room and then fell. Okay, they were like, how can this happen? Like, why did it go floating for some time and then land there? And that was the starting point to their, entire research.
That was a trigger.
Yeah, that was a trigger.
Wonderful.
And yeah, that one toy led to the entire invention of powered aircrafts itself. It's so fascinating. So these guys, so on that day, the December 17th, 1903, is when the first ever powered flight, took off by the Wright brothers. And again, that day was a very interesting day. They had this full model made and everything was okay. And this day they chose to, it was a good weather day, and they chose to, launch their first and make an attempt. And both these brothers had a toss as to who will be airborne. It can have, the aircraft can take only one person. Okay, they had a toss. And the elder one, Wilbur Wright, won the toss, and so he was supposed to get on the plane. So he went on the plane, and his younger brother Orville, he helped him out, and kind of got everything ready. And once the plane was just about to take off, it didn't take off, and it just fell down back. It had some issue. So since Wilbur had already finished his chance, he came down because his chance was to fly on this attempt. So next chance was by Orville, the younger dude.
Yeah.
So the younger guy, Orville Wright, went on the plane second time, and then when they tried to take this plane off, the plane took off. So the credit of first airborne guy was given to Orville Wright, the elder one, because he lost the bet.
Yeah.
And so the first flight that Orville Wright piloted, it lasted for just 12 seconds. And it
12
went
seconds?
12 seconds, that's it.
Okay.
But it took off with the power of the engines. So that was the biggest invention about. I mean, that was the biggest discovery.
Right.
First time something, an aircraft or a glider with an engine on it took off. And it lasted for 12 seconds. And they had subsequent attempts on the same day. By evening, I think the best ever flight was by the elder guy only, elder brother, Wilbur Wright, who had a flight that lasted for about 59 seconds.
59 seconds.
Yeah, and it went on to a distance of about 800 odd feet. So that was the story of Wright brothers in a nutshell. And of course, they went on to do a lot of things in the future, and they contributed immensely in the field of aviation. But drawing parallels to the same time frame in India. In India, there was this very interesting story of this man known as Shivkar Bapuji Talpade. Okay, he was born in Maharashtra, I think in the mid 1880s, 1800s, mid 1800s, and he in 1896 he was born in a very traditional family in Maharashtra.
Yeah.
And he early on in his age he got on to learn a lot of Vedas and all that. And he had looked for mentions of flying in the Vedas, and he picked it up from there, and he met this man known as Subbaraya Shastri from Karnataka in Kolar.
Right.
And he reached out to him, and this man was the author of a book known as Vaimanika Shastra. Okay, yeah, it had the scriptures of how to make an aircraft. And who he
Really?
Yeah, so Subbaraya Shastri, this man who wrote the book,
Okay.
he claims that he got all this knowledge from this saint known as Bharadwaja. Okay, so lots of interesting anecdotes. And so this man Shivkar Babuji Talpade, he took the scriptures from Subbaraya Shastri, and he said, I will try to make a plane. And he, in 1896, the same year Otto Lilienthal died while he was flying a glider. The same year, this man here in India had a plane ready.
Oh,
And this is at least 7 years before the Wright brothers even took the first plane off in the air. Okay, 7 years before the first, according to history, the first ever powered aircraft took off. In India, we had Shivkar Talpade, who had a plane ready and flew as well. And the plane took off at Bombay's Chowpatty Beach. It took off and it lasted for a whole 18 minutes, not like 12 seconds that the Wright brothers flew for. 18 minutes, and it flew to a height of 1500 feet.
1500 feet.
Yes, 1500 feet.
Right.
Okay, 1000 feet above the ground. And that was 1500 feet above the ground is just amazing. I
It
mean,
was a big win, man.
very big win.
Yeah.
And in fact, the Maharaja back then of Baroda and a big judge as well were all evidences to this entire incident that happened there. And they were eyewitnesses. And you know how this plane was built? It was built on the technology of mercury ion engine. Okay.
What is that?
Yeah,
Mercury?
it didn't have any engine. It didn't have a powered engine as such.
Okay.
The engine that took it up was mercury. And this was written in the Shastras before.
Really?
Yes. So, what the basic, the way the principle of working was mercury, when it comes in contact with sunlight, it reacts to the sunlight and then it produces hydrogen. Okay.
Oh, fuck, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Ah.
So the hydrogen expands and then the plane takes off. I mean, hydrogen is lighter than the air, in the air around. So because hydrogen is produced in the air, in that space, because of that reaction, the plane took off, and it was super interesting. The Mercury Vortex engine, it's known as. So all this was being made, and in fact, this was shown in the movie Hawai Zada in 2015, which stars Ayushmann Khurrana. So you definitely must urge all your viewers to watch that movie, and it's very interesting how us Indians have actually tasted flight far before the guys in the West have.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's one killer of a story.
Yes, yeah. It's a wonderful story of Shivkar Bapuji Talpade.
Ah.
Yes.
So actually, Indians do believe that this entire ecosystem, this entire universe, and human beings themselves are made up of four primary atoms.
Okay.
Hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon, oxygen.
Oxygen. Okay. Okay.
There are the mentions of all these gases, all these atoms in way back in our scriptures.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
When you're saying about this thing, that mercury and all these things, I remember this thing. And I also remember another interesting story I need to tell you. So there is one guy related, his name is Millennial or something. I don't exactly remember.
Okay.
But this guy is the first guy to invent a car which runs on water.
Wow.
Right? What happened is this guy used hydrogen, the liquid hydrogen.
Yeah.
When the liquid hydrogen gets combusted,
Okay.
it generates a pressure that moves the car forward.
Okay.
He put this idea in front of the government. 2 years later, he was died, man.
Oh my God.
And his last death statement was, "My intentions were pure, but the world's isn't." This is a dying statement.
Wow. Yeah.
Somebody killed him, literally.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of these inventions made in corners of the world, and a lot of these stories don't come out in the open. And for example, was this story of what you told me now, and the story of Shivkar Talpade.
So, Prithvi, when we talk about the history of aviation,
Yes.
right, as you mentioned about the world aviation, what happened in the history,
Yeah.
and the same time frame when it comes to India,
Yes.
I think there is a lot to speak about.
Yes, absolutely.
Indian culture.
Absolutely.
And it reminds me of way back written in scriptures.
Yeah.
Pushpaka Viman,
Yes,
stuff
yes.
like that. You want to say something about
Sure, definitely. So thousands of years before all of this happened in the world, including what happened in India with Shivkar Talpade and Wright brothers in the West and everything. Thousands of years ago, we have evidence of flying mentioned in the Ramayana, and there is this concept of Pushpaka Vimana, and it's a very interesting concept.
Yeah.
And so apparently Ravana, who was the king of Lanka, was a huge aviation fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I was about to come to that.
Yeah, he was a huge aviation enthusiast
Yes.
in today's terms, and apparently he flew a lot of planes to get to his place. And before we come to Pushpaka Vimana, I would like to tell you, I mean, the word Vimana is a Sanskrit word,
Right.
and it's got two, it's made of two words. V, which means the sky, and Mana means measuring out. So, measuring out the sky, measuring the sky out with this vehicle is what a Vimana is. So,
How
it was very,
creative that was, man.
very, yeah, very creative, very interesting. And before we come to Pushpaka Vimana, Ravana had his main aircraft, which was known as the Dandu Monara. Okay, so Dandu Monara was the main aircraft that he flew, not just within the country in India and Lanka, even the entire Southeast Asia. He used to fly around everywhere, according to the scriptures. Okay,
Okay, this was mentioned way back.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
called the Dandu Monara,
Right.
and people can look it up on the internet.
Right.
And interestingly, the Civil Aviation Authority of Sri Lanka has very recently ordered an investigation into this because the public know about there's lots of evidence, with the public, and they've issued a statement that they want to investigate this, how Sri Lanka has played an important role for Ravana's kingdom. They want to identify the aviation routes that Ravana took in Lanka, and they've come out, laid a statement saying that they're inviting the public to come up with evidences so that they can investigate. Okay,
Oh.
and this investigation was started way before COVID, and during COVID it took a small break,
Hmm.
and then now it has resumed recently. In fact, they even sought for help from the government of India, so that because there is some connection of Ramayana with India as well, so they
Right.
wanted cooperation from Indian government. And in fact, recently the Sri Lankan government has come out and made a statement saying that Ravana did have 5 airports,
5 airports.
which are identified now because I mean there are some evidence in the way it's strategically located in Sri Lanka. He
Ah,
had 5 airports and one aircraft repairing site.
the
Okay,
fuck.
so this Ravana was like super advanced, and he
Oh
was a
my
huge
goodness.
he
I
was a
mean,
huge.
so Adipurush wasn't wrong.
Probably, I mean, a lot of these things are inspired.
It wasn't wrong,
It
man.
was,
I mean,
yeah,
the way he showed Ravan,
yes,
in Adipurush
yes,
was so Zenzi, man.
yeah,
Literally, I mean,
yeah.
the way he had his haircut and the way
Yes, yeah.
he's operating things.
Yeah, a lot of things are true. I mean, a lot of stories are there and lots of sayings, and you can't go on evidence-based, approach for everything. You
Mhm.
have to, believe in certain things that are written in our scriptures because we as Indians do that.
Yes.
And so Ravana did have 6 sites in Sri Lanka, and the government themselves, the Civil Aviation Authority, has made a statement about this. In fact, there is this place known as Vera Gantota and Totupulu Kanda and lots of places in Sri Lanka which have been identified as Ravana's airports.
Oh,
And so that was the story of Dandu Monara,
right.
which was his personal aircraft.
Right.
The story of Pushpaka Vimana is very interesting, and it's more specific to Ramayana,
Mm.
where Ravana plays the villain, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
And the Pushpaka Vimana was actually not Ravana's. It was it was his stepbrothers,
Yes. Kubera, that he
Kubera's.
stole it from him.
Absolutely. So Kubera did a lot of penance and all that
Yeah.
to Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, sorry,
Yeah.
and Lord Brahma was gifted this plane, this Pushpaka Vimana by Lord
Vishwakarma.
Vishwakarma.
Yeah.
So Vishwakarma gifted this Pushpaka Vimana to Lord Brahma. And because Brahma was very happy of the because of the penance that Kubera performed, he
Yeah.
gifted it to him, saying that you can use it. And eventually Ravana fought with his stepbrother and defeated his kingdom, took Lanka, killed him, and also took the Pushpaka Vimana. And Pushpaka Vimana basically is a aircraft which is made of flowers.
Yeah.
It's a flowery aircraft,
Yes.
as the word suggests.
Yes.
And it has been used many times in the Ramayana. And the first time that it's mentioned in the Ramayana where it was used was when Ravana came and kidnapped Sita from India. The way he went back, he took Sita in this Pushpaka Vimana. He took it back. He took her back to Lanka in the Pushpaka Vimana,
Nice.
and which is why eventually Rama and his entire team, the army of Vanaras,
Right.
took many days. They had to build a bridge and all that. Then finally reached Lanka.
Yeah.
Whereas Ravana had taken Sita in this Pushpaka Vimana, the aircraft.
Yeah.
And there are also certain suggestions made in the scriptures that once Rama and his full team reached Lanka, killed Ravana and all that, Hanuman burnt down all the airports that Ravana had.
Oh.
Yeah, and the entire family, Rama and Sita and everyone, they all went back to Ayodhya in the same Pushpaka Vimana. That is why they reached Ayodhya really quick. Because
Right.
Ayodhya is in the center of the country now.
Ah.
And so apparently this Pushpaka Vimana was used for that as well. So all these are mentioned, everywhere in the scriptures, and it interests me so much. It fascinates me so much.
Yeah.
And yes, that's the story of Pushpaka
And
Vimana.
I have another interesting fact about Pushpaka
Sure.
Vimana where Mr. Rajmouli, S.S. Rajmouli,
Yes. Huh?
he went on record and
Huh?
said
Huh?
that there was one song in
Mm.
Bahubali 2,
Mm.
where Prabhas and
Mm.
Anushka will head towards,
Right.
their kingdom,
Yeah.
Mahishmati.
Yes.
There is a song in between.
Right. 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 Huh?
That entire sequence
Huh?
is inspired from Pushpaka Vimana.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that he said it on record.
As a matter of fact, the scriptures say that Ravana's both Dandu Manara and this Pushpaka Vimana were again propelled by the Mercury vortex engine. So it was something got to do with Mercury for sure, which was again an inspiration to Shivkar Talpade to make his Mercury powered aircraft. And by the way, the aircraft that Shivkar Talpade made was known as Marut Sakha. Okay, that was the name. Marut Saka was the name of the aircraft that he made. Marut means stream of air. Saka means friend. So he with this vehicle was basically a friend of stream of air. So it made friendship with the stream of air, and that's how it flew. And the common ground here is Mercury, the Mercury vortex engine. So it's very interesting.
No, when I hear something like this from India, no,
Yes.
in the past,
Mm.
what these people have done,
Mm-hmm.
it really makes me feel so proud, man.
Absolutely.
So proud,
Absolutely.
and every time I listen to this,
Mm.
I'll convince myself
Yeah.
that I should never go abroad. To
Absolutely.
study or whatever
Absolutely.
nonsense.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what strikes my head.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but when we talk about all the history of
Mm.
aviation in India, and
Mm.
I come up with a very interesting story.
Mm.
I came across
Mm. Mm.
an interesting story of J.R.D. Tata, the
Right.
father of Indian aviation.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What do you want to say about him?
So yes, I mean the J.R.D. Tata, as everyone knows him, he's the father of Indian aviation,
Right.
and as a matter of fact, he received the first commercial pilot license of
Mm.
India, and it was issued to him by the Aero Club of India on the 10th of Feb, 1929.
Right.
That's when he was issued the first CPL number one was issued to him, and his first flight was from Karachi to Mumbai,
Right.
and he
Karachi is in
yeah,
Pakistan.
yeah. Back then it was 1929.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
part of India before the.
Yeah.
So after the independence is when it was separated, right? So
Mm.
during the 1929 1920s, it was part of India, and he made a flight from Karachi to Mumbai,
Mumbai.
and that was the first ever flight that he piloted. And the airline that he operated was known as Tata Airlines, which eventually got nationalized and was bought by the central government under the Nehru government, and it was called Air India. It was actually divided into two segments. The domestic segment was known as Indian Airlines,
Mm.
and the international carrier bit was known as Air India. And that entire story has come one full circle now, where very recently the Tata Group bought Air India, and it's again back to their hands.
Yeah.
So Tata's was sold off by JRD Tata to
Right.
the Indian government, and then they operated and then went through a whole lot of mess. And very recently Tata's bought it back,
Bought it
and I
back,
can only wait and see how Air India is going to grow and what's going to happen to Air India with the Tatas.
I think
Yeah.
it'll be killing, man.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
whatever Mr. Tata's family
Yes.
take care of,
Yes.
they're killer products.
Yes, absolutely.
Whenever there is a story, there is a line which
Mm.
entrepreneurs say, which is very famous.
Mm.
You just go to your kitchen
Mm.
and see 70% of the products
Yeah,
belong
yeah.
under Tata.
Tatas, absolutely. And there is a misconception again about the Tatas. People say why, I mean, before they bought Air India,
Yeah.
people thought that, that Tatas own most sectors, like you said, in the kitchen, almost salt, sugar, tea,
Yeah.
everything is a Tata product.
Yeah.
But how come they didn't have an airline as such, which was under the Tatas? But that's a misconception again, because, they own AirAsia India.
Yeah.
The entire Indian vertical of AirAsia is owned by them.
Yeah.
And Vistara, of course, is owned by them, and Singapore Airlines. And now Air India, the biggest purchase has been made. So in fact, they're going to start doing some kind of monopoly in the Indian sky soon. They own 3 out of the airlines that are existing here.
I'm waiting for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And 3 out of 6 airlines. So 6 airlines in India make up 98% of the operations.
Yeah.
And out of that, 3 are owned by the Tatas. So they are in this segment as well, in this sector. And let's see what happens.
So, what are the major differences what you have right now in modern aviation, in India?
So the aviation industry has technologically, advanced so much as of today. Modern aviation is so damn safe.
Yeah.
It's so reliable, and it's efficient,
Right.
and it's a lot faster as well. So it is I would not be wrong if I say that air transport is the safest mode of transport in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I
Absolutely.
told you, it's more likely you could, meet with an accident or die while crossing the road or going, when you go in the car here
Yeah.
in the streets,
Yeah.
than dying on an air accident.
Yeah.
It's just that when an air accident happens, it's so catastrophic, it's so violent, and it's
So
pretty much,
huge.
yeah, it's a total loss.
Yeah.
It's so huge that people have this, preconceived notion in their mind
Wisdom.
that, oh my God, I'm scared to go on an aircraft because it's so violent, and what if I die in a crash? Yeah, I mean, air transport is the safest mode of transport, and that has only been the case because of the technological advancements.
Mm.
There is immense research that has gone into this field,
Yeah.
and today, with autopilots coming in, a whole lot of computers on board,
Right.
it is just making air travel a lot more safer,
Right.
and there is redundancy. Redundancy is removed. Redundancy is removed immensely, and
Yeah.
for a lot of components on board, there are backups. In
Mm.
fact, in the cockpit we have two pilots, so in case one goes down, there's another one.
Yeah.
For all the sensors on board, there are again backups, and we have two engines as a minimum standard thing on aircraft. So there's lots of redundancy that has been covered, and thereby it's a very safe mode of transport as of today.
Yeah. And I also keep listening about this. I don't know whether it's true
Mm.
or not.
Mm.
Half of the plane
Mm.
is always automated, and the remaining half is actually done by pilots. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, so as of today,
Yeah.
in Indian skies, if we talk
Right.
about Indian aviation,
Yeah.
the critical phases of flight, which is
Right.
takeoff and landing,
Right.
to an extent, of course, is based on the SOPs issued by the manufacturer of the aircraft.
So what are
Uh,
SOPs?
SOPs are standard operating procedures,
Right.
and so these are issued by the manufacturers. You're flying an Airbus, you're flying an Embraer, you're flying a Boeing. There are certain guidelines or like user manual,
User manuals.
yeah,
Yeah.
issued by the manufacturer, and based on that, there are certain durations where you have to fly it manually.
Right.
And but as a whole, in this country, wherever what all aircrafts have autopilots, the critical phases of flight are controlled manually. So be it takeoff and landing, it is done manually at this point.
Right.
However, there are auto land and auto takeoff technologies already in the space. Critical phases of flight as of today are still manual. Of course, once you start climbing and everything is okay, it is put onto an autopilot mode, and the navigation pretty much is all through autopilot. So it reduces the cockpit workload,
Yeah.
and thereby reduces fatigue, and thereby increases the pilot's efficiency to carry out more sectors, more flights in a day.
Right.
And again, thereby increases the profitability of the airline. So airline industry in India, it's all about the profitability.
Yeah,
And it's a huge
absolutely.
money game.
Absolutely.
But coming to the accidents again, in fact 2021, the accident rate, so accidents in is measured as per rate per million aircrafts, per million departures. Okay, so it's just astonishing to know that accidents in this space, in the aviation sector, are measured in per million, and not how many accidents happen in a day.
Yeah.
So it's that rare, and accidents are that rare. And in 2021, the accident rate per million departures was 4.34. So every 4 aircrafts per million aircrafts could meet with an accident. That was the rate. The next year, in 2022, the Indian regulation body issued a statement that the accident rate for 2022 was just 0.86.
Do you have something to say about the World War II interpretation of India, in
Absolutely.
aviation?
Yes, definitely. So the World War II was a very big event, and India did play, although not directly, but indirectly played a huge role with when it comes to aviation. In this perspective of aviation, it played a huge role in the sense India was a very strategic point where they could have air bases where their bombers could take off and go bomb and come back and land. So there were many bases made, close to about six to eight bases even as of today. The Kolkata airport, Dum airport, and many airports. In fact, recently in Orissa, there was a random airbase that was discovered, which is the World War II runway before.
The random airbase this.
Yeah, I mean, it was just discovered suddenly because it was covered, because it was close to 70, 80, 100 years back, and it was discovered recently, and the state government of Orissa is developing it. In fact, it is one of the longest runways in the country. It's over 3.5 kilometers.
3.5 kilometers?
Yeah, the runway. And it was made during the World War II time. And India, so the Allied and Axis were the two forces during the World War, if you're aware. So Allied was by the UK, US,
Yes.
France, and all together.
Yes.
USSR, Soviet Union,
Soviet
USSR.
Union,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
So India was part of them. So the United States Air Force set up a lot of runways in India. back then in that time. Of course, India was under British rule, but since Britain and US were in the same team, allied team, the US Air Force set up a lot of bases in India for their bombers to take off. And even today, there are actual existing airports. Like I told you, Kolkata Airport, the Kolkata airport right now is congested very, very highly, and they're unable to build another runway. They want another runway desperately, but this why they're not able to build goes back to the World War II time. Back then, they wanted to build like a crisscross runway. Okay,
Really?
during the World War II time. Even now, Bombay has a crisscross runway.
Really? How does that work?
So only one of them is operational. Based
Okay.
on the traffic and all that, they use it conveniently in this
All
direction or that
right.
direction.
All right.
Only one is at use
Right.
at a given point.
Right.
So during the World War II, the Kolkata airport, there was one runway built, and they wanted to build another crisscross intersecting runway, but the US and the UK dismissed it off because if the Axis forces came and bombed the exact intersecting point,
Right.
then both the runways would be of no use. So they dismissed it. But today, Kolkata airport is so congested, and they're unable to build another runway, and they're looking at other alternate where they can build another airport somewhere else. So the Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose airport is super congested, and it is because of the World War II. You can blame it on World War II.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to know news recently
Hmm.
that Hyderabadis are in a very big surprise
Yeah.
that there is another terminal which is coming up,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the center part is the metro one.
Yes. Yes.
A huge shout out to KCR and KTR, man. I mean,
Absolutely.
they're going to make it like
Oh,
America.
it looks
I mean,
phenomenal already, and the air
Yeah.
traffic is growing so much, and the terminal extension is happening, and it already looks so phenomenal. I just can't wait to see, how it all
Seriously, I
turns
just
out.
can't wait
Yeah,
to see,
yeah,
how it looks.
absolutely,
When it's done, a couple of
yeah,
more bars and stuff.
yeah, precisely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So when we talk about all these things, no, I remember something called private traveling, like
Mm.
private jets,
Yes,
private planes.
yes.
Can you explain this domain?
Said, like we spoke about modern aviation in India,
Yes.
it has become extremely safe, and the accident rate has gone down significantly.
Almost zero.
It's almost zero. Like in 2021, it was 4.35 accidents per million departures.
Right.
And that was high, but it significantly dropped the next year in 2022 in India. The accident rate was only 0.87 per million departures. So it's almost reaching the zero. And the focus of the Indian aviation regulatory bodies has been to convert these accidents to incidents, which are more, small controlled, like something like a, runway excursion where the plane goes off the runway, or like a tire burst, or like minor incidents, as compared to accident, which are much bigger and which are sometimes fatal.
Yeah.
So they're trying to convert these accidents, reduce these accidents, and maybe just convert them to incidents so that there's no loss of human life or property. And yes, I mean, private travel in India is booming. And especially after COVID, it got accelerated even more.
Right.
There were a lot of private aircraft owners before COVID,
Yeah.
but after COVID, the guys that didn't own aircrafts as well are now chartering aircrafts from these private charter
Charter
rental.
flights.
Yes, from private aircraft rental companies. They're renting it out, so because they find it during COVID. What happened, right? There was a lot of uncertainty, first of all, with the flight schedule. Although it resumed, the flight operations resumed. First, it was unsafe for them because they didn't want to contract COVID by traveling in the regular passenger aircrafts. Second, there were lots of cancellations, and there's lots of, you had to wear that PPE kit, and it was horrible. And people who had the kind of money, who could, they could afford the private air travel, started, giving it a shot.
Right.
They thought, okay, we can try this. Let's see how this works. And once they saw it, they tasted private travel. Now they don't want to come back to passenger travel, right?
Yeah.
So they've gotten spoiled completely, and they love the way, the advantages that it brings.
Absolutely.
And a lot of new purchases have been made in the in the billionaire category among the Indians. And in fact, very recently, Mr. Kalanidhi Maran, the head of the Sun TV
Sun
group,
TV network.
yes, he bought one of the most expensive private jets. It's a Bombardier Global 7500, and it's one of the biggest private jets as well. Super, classy, and it's got the state of the art technology on it.
Yeah.
It can travel close to about 7,700 nautical miles. So which means it can go to the US without a single pitch stop. So the issue that was there, in the recent times with these private jets is that they need like a pitch stop if they're going to the US, because they can't carry the small jets, right?
Yeah.
They're close to 15, 20 seater jets,
Yes.
and they can't carry enough fuel to go to the US without a pitch stop, without a fuel stop. So refueling stop. So Mr. Kalanidhi Maran has bought that Global 7500, and it's almost how much? It's about $70 million, which makes it close to about 600 crores.
$20 million.
Yes, it's about 600 odd crores. And in fact, Adar Poonawalla as well, his Poonawalla Aviation company bought Global 6500,
Right.
which is almost as good as that one. That's about 450 crores. And that's again a very state of the art aircraft. And that can fly about 6,600 nautical miles in one shot, in one takeoff without any refueling.
Yeah.
So it has been booming a lot. A lot of these super rich of India has been flying, and incidentally, there have been some very nice brands or charter companies that have come up in India. For example, there is this brand known as Jet Set Go, which was started by Kanika Tekriwal. She heads it, and she has a super inspiring story. You should check it out. And what they do essentially is that they're an Uber for aircrafts, private aircrafts.
Uber for aircraft.
Yeah.
What
So
do
you just so you can get on their app or
Okay.
go get on their website or call them on their hotline,
Okay.
and you can ask them that you want to travel, say, from Hyderabad to Delhi and Delhi Hyderabad, and you can book it on their app or whatever, and you can choose they have a whole range of fleet. They have aircrafts from the base category, from like a 3-4 seater or a 5 seater, and
Three, 4 seater.
yeah, 4 to 5 seater is the basic small category,
Okay.
which includes again two pilots. In fact, like their pillows inside the aircraft are so customized. It looks so cool. It's one pink Jet Set Go kind of pillow,
Okay.
and a whole lot of luxury, features inside
Right.
that kind of pamper anybody that's traveling in their aircrafts. And Club One Air is another. It's probably Club One Air is, I think, one of the biggest private jet operators
Right.
in this country, and they're doing really well. And especially after COVID, 100% they are booming. And I think the MD of Club One Air had once mentioned in his interviews that out of the people that rent their private jets out, 70% don't come back. They just rent it for the first time because it's super expensive and it's that one-off. Let's try it. They have the money,
Yeah.
but they don't get back. But 30%, the remaining 30%, when they experience it for the first time, they haven't stopped after that. They're regular customers. They have that kind of money and they keep using it because it just makes so much sense to them. So it is something that's going to boom a lot more in the next coming decade for sure. And I'm looking forward, man, like so much.
looking forward
yeah,
so
I'm
much,
looking forward to the point where private travel right now it's only limited to the super rich.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to the point where the upper middle class at least should find it affordable. In the sense, if these companies eventually get on to sell by the seat, if they sell tickets by the seat, some by the seat service of these jets,
Yeah.
it'll be very convenient for someone who can afford that kind of money. Say you're going from Hyderabad to Tirupati and back to Hyderabad, and you don't have the time to book a flight and go at that particular time where the flight is going. You're busy. You have a business here and you're busy working. You want to be traveling at a convenient time. So if you want to buy one seat in a private jet,
Yeah.
that'll be really cool. And
very
I'm looking forward to that. And coming to another side of private air travel is fractional ownership of aircrafts, right?
Oh, really?
Yes,
I
so
mean,
that's
this concept of fractional
Ownership.
ownership.
Yeah.
Is now booming in real estate. Actually.
Yes, it's booming in real estate. So
Yeah.
aircrafts are also some kind of an asset, right? Like it's that
Yeah,
expensive.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's in fact a little more expensive than sites or
Absolutely, yeah.
plots in
Yeah.
any big city. So one plane would cost anywhere upwards of 30-40 crores, a good decent basic starting model of a private jet. So these things are very expensive and it requires a fractional ownership model where one airplane is bought by 5-6 different players and they get to choose when they want to be using it. Right. So with this there is private travel is being encouraged for sure. And you could get on to buy like a small plane, like a small 4-seater piston engine aircraft for about 3 crores. You can divide it among 4 or 5 people and own a plane for like 50 lakhs. So which is 50-60 lakhs, you can own a plane yourself.
Right.
So this is something that has been very, very popular in the US. It has been going on for over a decade now. And it's
Really?
and it's
But nobody
coming.
know this, right?
We know people don't know about it because it's not that popular here in India,
Yeah.
but it's definitely picking up.
Man, I have to ask you this. Recently, I've
Yeah.
gone through a concept
Yeah.
which really blew my brains off.
Okay.
There's something called air taxis.
Yes. it's
What the
definitely-
hell is that? I
We're,
mean,
we're very close to that reality of air taxis or flying taxis, and these aircrafts are known predominantly as eVTOLs, EVTOLs or eVTOLs,
Okay.
and the full form of that is Electric Vertical Takeoff and Landing System. So eVTOL aircrafts are basically smaller sized aircrafts, which
How
are
small?
say 5 by 5, 5 meter by 5 meter is like a big SUV. that
Oh,
size.
really?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
that
okay.
size because it only makes it easy if it's of that size. Imagine a helicopter; it's so huge,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
can't land
yeah,
in
yeah.
the city anywhere, come down, and it's so huge it can only land on helipads. So EV tolls is a new concept which is fully electric first,
Fully
and
electric.
fully electric EV tolls. So
Oh,
it is definitely fully electric,
right,
and which basically improves two things. One is it's sustainable because it's electric.
right.
Second, it also has very low noise levels. Imagine we have vehicles, we have cars and bikes on the streets of Hyderabad here,
Yeah,
and it's so noisy with them.
yeah,
Imagine having aeroplanes like flying so many of them. It'll be
absolutely.
super loud. So we
Yeah,
can't have such loud environments, and all this
yeah.
has been thought about from a really long time. And eVTOLs are being designed, and this entire study is basically, known as urban air mobility or advanced
Mm,
air mobility, as they popularly call it in the West.
yeah.
So it's definitely in the near future. It's going to be a reality,
Ah.
and flying taxis are going to be coming soon. And I have to definitely mention a couple of firms that are working on it. There is
Mm-hmm.
this company known as Joby Aviation,
Okay.
which recently got bought over by Apple. And
Apple.
yeah, Apple has bought
When
that
did Apple
company.
come into
Yeah,
aviation? Huh?
very recently they finished their transaction and they bought
Oh,
over Joby Aviation.
that's so cool.
And about 2 days before, I mean, 2 days ago, before we recorded this conversation,
Yeah.
just 2 days ago, the CEO of the founder of Joby Aviation said that his flying taxis will be in service in 2025. That's like 2 years from
Two
today,
years from
man.
now,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And yeah, it's at least about 10 times faster than road transport.
Yeah,
And looking, I mean, if you ask me about the cost figures,
yeah.
there is a speculation that Joby Aviation founder once said that he's looking at a $5 per mile kind of cost, which is
$5.
okay, which is not, I mean, expensive, of course.
Yeah,
But there is this Indian manufacturer, eVTOL manufacturer again. In the
yeah,
Indian space, there have been, advancements made in the
yeah.
flying taxi space. And there is this IIT Madras startup called
Oh,
ePlane Company. Imagine, you open up your Uber app, and
wow.
then there is the first option, which is moto. You get a two-wheeler, next is an auto. Then you have, for a car, maybe you have three, four options. And then there's also Uber Air. If you
Yeah,
have the kind of money and if you have to go get there fast,
absolutely.
please take a flying taxi and go.
Absolutely.
So it's super interesting. It's just
Yeah,
fascinates.
that sounds
It
super
just
cool,
fascinates
man.
me a lot.
I
Yeah.
mean, we are living in a very nice generation where we
Yeah.
could see everything, building up.
Absolutely. You and I, the millennials,
Yeah,
have seen, like,
building up.
you have seen,
Yeah,
I've seen it all.
yeah,
You've
yeah.
seen like these bullock cart types where the horses used to pull.
Yes,
You've
yes, yes.
seen two-wheelers, two-stroke two-wheelers, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
and we are now right now talking about flying taxis, in the near future.
Right,
It's
right.
so damn cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So when we talk about air traffics and
Mm,
all these things, it
mm,
again pulls me back to
mm,
air crashes, where
mm,
can you, there is something I've heard, which
mm,
I don't know whether it's true or not.
mm.
There is some plane which got
Mm.
crashed on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, yeah, that was a very unfortunate story.
Yeah,
Uh,
is
it
that true?
it's true, it's true. It was an Indian Airlines aircraft which
Okay.
took off from Bombay
Uh,
on the 14th of Feb 1990. Okay,
yeah.
it was an Indian Airlines. It was called Indian Airlines then.
Uh,
Now it got merged with Air India.
okay.
So it took off with about 180, 140 passengers, if I'm not wrong. Uh,
140.
40 passengers,
Right.
and that plane was about 4 to 6 months old. Super new plane. Okay,
Okay.
very new Airbus A320,
Right.
and it took off from Bombay. It was scheduled to land in Bangalore,
Bangalore.
in the old airport of Bangalore, the HAL airport, and pretty much it was an eventful flight. There was no issue as such through the entire journey. The flight was pretty much uneventful,
Right.
rather, and once it started descending towards Bangalore,
Hmm.
there was a lot of errors made by the pilot, according
Oh,
to the investigation.
okay.
And he descended way below the actual glide slope,
Right.
and he went on to descend to a point where he actually touched down just before the runway at a golf course. So if you see the HAL airport, it's got a golf course just
Yes.
before it, which
Yes.
is the Karnataka Golf
Uh,
Association,
right.
KGA. And then it crashed there, and then it was momentarily again airborne for some time. After which it hit like an embankment, and then it crashed completely. And I think about 92 people perished in that accident. They passed away
Oh.
because of, again, a lot of lapses. The aircraft caught fire, and most of the bodies were charred beyond death. In fact, the police authorities were forced to do a mass burial of all the bodies because they couldn't even identify.
Ah.
They just called one person from every faith. They called a priest. They called a Maulvi. They called a priest from the Gurudwara, and then they had a mass burial, and then they closed the issue because it was that bad. However, about 50 odd people still went on to live and survive that accident. But it was just very unfortunate that it happened on Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. Yeah.
That there were lots of, I'm sure there were lots of people coming back to see their lovers in Bangalore, or they were traveling together as a couple, and it's a very unfortunate incident.
Unfortunate, yeah.
Yeah.
So what could be? This might be a little stupid question, but
Mm.
so what could be the safest place in a
Mm.
plane to sit?
Well, according to the aviation regulatory bodies,
Uh,
FAA and DGCA,
right.
FAA is the US regulatory body for
Right.
aviation. It's called Federal Aviation Administration,
Mhm.
and DGCA is Directorate General of
Yeah.
Civil Aviation.
Yeah.
So, according to them, there isn't a safest seat, okay?
Right.
But if you pull up the statistics with
Yeah.
all the accidents that have happened, all the plane crashes,
Yeah.
and in which there has been some kind of survival in the plane, the least amount of fatality is with the last third, the last one third of the plane when you sit,
Ah.
is when you more likely will survive. Okay,
Oh,
the
okay.
if you divide the entire cabin
Right.
into three parts,
Right.
the first part and second part have a much higher, close to about 35-38%
Right.
fatality. You'll probably die there at a rate of 38%. But in the last third, 32% is the rate. So it's more likely that you will survive an accident in case the plane crashes if you sit in the last third of the plane. So next time you go on a plane and your viewers get on a plane, they know where to sit now. They know where to pick their seat in
Yeah.
during web check-in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one thing which really interests me is this hijacks.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
hijacks of the planes. Can you tell me any of the stories, regarding the hijack?
Yeah, I can tell you about this very popular Indian hijack incident that happened.
Yeah.
This was in the 90s,
Hmm.
late 90s. I think it was 1999. There was this Indian Airlines flight IC814,
Okay.
which was scheduled to travel from take off from Nepal, Tribhuvan International Airport, and land in Delhi.
Yeah.
It was a short flight, and the flight took off. It was pretty much uneventful. En route, there were these hijackers who were already on board with a whole lot of ammunition,
Yeah.
and they took complete charge of the aircraft, and they asked the pilots to fly west towards Lahore, towards Pakistan.
Pakistan, yeah.
Yes, and the plane ended up going over Lahore. Although the Pakistan, Air Force and the airport at Lahore didn't give permission for the aircraft to be landed. They didn't get permission to land, and they tried a couple of times. They circled around Lahore. Once they didn't get and the fuel was running out, they went back to Amritsar and they landed. They did get permission from the Indian authorities to land. They landed, and the hijackers were very, very, very serious on the fact that nobody is going to get out or get inside the plane.
Right.
They just wanted fuel. And there were lots of, what do you say, threats being made that if anybody tries to get in, any kind of commandos come near the aircraft. Of course, the Indian government already knew that this is an hijack situation. They handled it very, very, carefully. And so they tried couple of times to get it refueled, but the Indian government wasn't really ready to refuel it, because if they refueled, then again, there's no stopping.
Yes.
So a lot of negotiation happened,
Right.
and it didn't work out. And the plane took off without getting refueled.
Without getting
Without
refueled.
getting refueled, it took off, and then because the situation is so critical that the aircraft would just fall over the city of Lahore, they were again over Lahore. So it was refueled in Lahore,
Yeah.
and the Pakistan Air Force didn't do anything about it, didn't take any kind of control of the plane. They let it take off again, because of course they were getting death threats, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do, and it was all mostly Indian citizens on board. So then it took off again from Lahore. It was redirected by the hijackers to Dubai, and then in Dubai it landed after again a lot of rejections and refusal from the Dubai authorities. It finally landed there. There at Dubai, they kind of offloaded about a few passengers. There was also one man who they had stabbed, and he passed away. He was a young chap. He was the only one that died in this entire incident.
Right.
But he was offloaded on the plane. And again, the plane took off, and then finally it was redirected to Afghanistan. It landed,
Afghanistan?
yeah. Back then, in the 1999, in the 1990s, it was Afghanistan was governed by Taliban. It was headed by Taliban, like it is now as of today. And it landed in Kandahar International Airport, and then it was circled completely by Taliban militants. And this entire operation took 7 days. And all along the 7 days, all the passengers on board were inside the aircraft. They were made to sit there, and food was given to them little bit here and there, irregular meals, and they were not allowed to go to the restroom, and it was a horrible situation.
Not allowed to go to
Yeah, it was. I mean, there have been lots of movies and documentaries made on this. It was horrible. I mean, 7 days of horrific experience for all the passengers. But thankfully, there was only that one casualty which who passed away unfortunately because of the stabbing. But thankfully, there were no other fatalities on the plane. Everyone else was safe on board. Eventually, after 7 days of negotiation, the Indian government, which was led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee back then, he was the PM. They had to release these three prisoners, terrorists from Indian authorities from the prisons of India, and they were released. After which the terrorist that had hijacked let go of this plane. So that was one very very popular hijack stories of India. After which, thankfully, there hasn't been any a major incident of hijack here in Indian skies.
So,
Yeah.
what are your favorite films of aviation?
Oh, that's a very interesting thing. So my favorite movies of aviation would
Top Gun?
Top Gun for sure,
For
Top
sure.
Gun
Yeah.
and Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
And the next would be Castaway.
Castaway. Tom
Yeah,
Hanks.
Tom Hanks. It had that FedEx aircraft
Yes,
crashing into
yes.
an island. And then there's this movie known as 7 Nights 6 Days.
I know
You
about
should
this.
definitely watch it.
Ah.
It stars Harrison Ford. They go in a small plane and then they encounter bad weather and then they crash land on an island.
Oh.
And they spend it land crash lands the night.
Right.
So they spend the next 6 days. That's why 7 Nights 6 Days is the name of the movie.
Right.
They spend 7 nights on the island, on a random island.
Yeah.
And that is a wonderful movie. Then I really like, of course, The Terminal, although not an entire aviation movie, but Tom Hanks at his
Yeah,
best.
Tom Hanks, yeah.
Then the next movie that I would like to suggest you, aviation wise, is Catch Me If You Can.
Extraordinary
Superb movie. It
film,
had
yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio and
Killer film.
Tom Hanks. Yes.
Yeah.
And there have been some good Indian aviation movies as well. I really like Uyare,
Uyare
which is a
film.
Malayalam
Malayalam
movie.
yeah.
And there's also Neerja, which was very well made, I thought. And yeah, I really hope that a lot of good aviation movies come up in India because India has so many stories, so many interesting things to talk about with respect to aviation. And yeah,
You know, I will make this Talpade movie someday.
oh yes, you should. You should. I mean, it's made in Bollywood. You should definitely bring it to South Indian languages and
Yes.
maybe make a Telugu version in Tollywood.
I'll do a periodic film on that.
Yes, you should. It's super interesting, and there has been so much of it written in the scriptures.
Yeah.
You should. Yeah.
Anyways, thank you so much, man.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you for having me on the OG show. And I had lots of fun chatting with you. And
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
About it.
I mean, looking ahead for your bright future. And
Thank you.
so I just forgot to ask you, how many flying hours do you have right now?
As we speak, as of today, I have about 160 hours. I'm just finishing off my CPL training.
Right.
I did my licensing in private pilot license. I got that, and after did my private pilot license training, I went on to do my commercial pilot license. I'm just about to finish now,
Yeah.
but I'm just looking forward to all that is in store for us in the next few years, and I really hope something good happens, especially for India,
Yeah.
because I think I recently read up somewhere that 95% of the world population has never been on a plane. Okay, so the next time you get on a plane, thank your stars and say thank you God. I'm the chosen 5%.
Yeah.
Right. So there's so much that's in potential that's in store for us as aviators.
Right.
So I'm really looking forward, man. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Love all the pilots in the world.
Thank you. Thank you.